On this Sunday night, Russian insurrection. The fallout from that unprecedented challenge to President Putin's regime.
For Putin right now, it's a matter of trying to calm the situation.
And what it could mean for Ukraine. Dodging death.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What stopped this father and son from boarding that doomed submersible? Hitting the brakes.
Well, I was shocked.
Global News investigates the delayed delivery of millions of dollars worth of armored vehicles. Plus, pride and joy. Canada's LGBTQ2+ community takes to the streets with support from some four-legged friends.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
What a difference a day can make. This was the view from Moscow this afternoon. Crowds out and about, enjoying a sunny Sunday. But a cloud of uncertainty hangs over Russia tonight, just 24 hours after an army of heavily armed mercenaries advanced toward the capital, threatening President Vladimir Putin's iron grip on power. Good evening and thank you for joining us. That short-lived Russian rebellion appears to be over, at least for now, after the leader of the Wagner group agreed to move himself and his troops to neighboring Belarus. In exchange, the Russian charges against them were dropped, but there remain significant questions about what that extraordinary incursion could mean for Putin and his war in Ukraine. Redmond Shannon has our top story tonight.
Russian police back in control of Rostov-on-Don. The only signs left of Saturday's rebellion are tank tracks in its streets. This man says everyone is glad the one-day takeover by private Wagner troops ended peacefully, but says it was a sign of deeper issues in Russia. Some Rostov residents cheered the troops as they stood down and lauded their leader Yevgeny Prigozhin as he left for exile in Belarus, part of the deal brokered by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko.
The failures of Russia's war in Ukraine are reverberating increasingly within Russia itself.
Prigozhin's sudden decision to call off his rebellion may have come after he realized his march toward Moscow would fail, and neither he nor Putin had much to gain from seeing Russians kill Russians.
I think for Putin right now, it's a matter of trying to calm the situation.
It won't have been easy for Putin to let Prigozhin go free. Putin may have instead calculated that Wagner's ongoing missions on behalf of Russia needed to be managed.
Those who are in Africa and Syria will need a leader, and the problem would be to find a credible leader, somebody to replace Prigozhin.
The chaos sparked by Prigozhin could present Ukraine with battlefield opportunities and potential challenges too.
If he has gone to Belarus and has kept an effective fighting force around him, then he presents a threat again to the Ukrainian flank closest to Kyiv.
If this unprecedented challenge to Putin has weakened his authority, his next move will likely aim to reverse that perception, particularly among the Russian public. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Canada and its allies are watching the situation in Russia closely, as are the millions of Ukrainians enduring Vladimir Putin's war on their country. Well, today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about that short-lived insurrection. The crisis exposed significant cracks in Russia's leadership, but as Heather Yourex-West explains, the international community is treading carefully in its response.
Members of Calgary's Ukrainian community together in a show of support, anxiously waiting to see how such a brazen challenge of the Russian president will impact their homeland.
We want our country back. We want it to be free. We want it to be liberated.
A day after an 11th hour deal saw Yevgeny Prigozhin abort his mutiny attempt, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with the Ukrainian president. On Twitter, Volodymyr Zelensky said he spoke about the current situation on the battlefield and shared Ukraine's assessment of the attempted coup in Russia.
There are lots of unanswered questions, including the questions of what happens to Prigozhin's forces. Do they remain in Ukraine? I mean, we saw the extraordinary image of these forces coming out of Ukraine and going into Russia just yesterday.
Landing in Iceland Sunday, Trudeau is scheduled to meet with Nordic leaders for a 2-day summit.
The best course of action, I think, is to wait and see, really. We don't want to play favorites. In any kind of conflict between Putin, Prigozhin, or any other kind of Russian warlord, there are no good guys in this situation.
While the uprising appeared to take Moscow by surprise, reports suggest U.S. intelligence officials had been aware of Prigozhin's plans to challenge the Russian leadership for some time.
And this really is fundamentally an internal matter for the Russians. We're seeing it unfold. Again, we saw the rising tensions over several months that led to this. But exactly where this goes, we don't know.
Millions of Ukrainians forced from their homes by war will be watching closely to find out.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
And as Heather mentioned, Russia will be top of mind for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau when he meets with leaders of Nordic nations in Iceland this week. But that's not the only issue on their agenda. Touria Izri is traveling with the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was invited as a special guest of the Nordic Summit, a gathering of Nordic nations, which is being held on Westman Island, known for its sweeping landscapes and volcanoes. And in this small country of just under 400,000 people, the rising threat of Russia hits especially close to home. Trudeau is holding bilateral meetings with the leaders of Iceland, Finland, and Denmark.
We'll talk about our strength on Ukraine. We'll talk about how we're watching carefully the situation in Russia right now, as it's been complex over the past couple of days. I just over the past hour have spoken with President Zelensky and President Biden.
The Nordic Summit is largely seen as a preview to next month's NATO meeting. Finland recently joined, and Sweden is pushing to become a member. Protecting Arctic sovereignty and reducing energy dependence on Russia are expected to dominate discussions as Nordic countries increasingly distance themselves from Russia. Iceland announced it's closing its embassy in Moscow later this summer. Touria Izri, Global News, near Westman Islands, Iceland.
The U.S. Coast Guard announced plans to investigate the cause of that catastrophic implosion of the Titan submersible last week that killed all 5 people on board. The Coast Guard has opened what it calls a Marine Board investigation with the goal of preventing another tragedy.
The NBI is currently in its initial evidence collection phase, including debris salvage operations at the incident site and evidence collection in coordination with Canadian authorities in the port of St. John's, Newfoundland.
The debris site is on the seabed, less than 500 meters from the bow of the Titanic wreck and 4 kilometers below the surface. A final report will be presented to help improve international safety standards for submersibles. Meanwhile, a family from Las Vegas is now sharing their harrowing story of how close they came to being on board the Titan. Mike Armstrong joins us from St. John's with the details. Mike.
Well, Jeff, as we know, there was a father and son on the Titan last week. In fact, the dive took place on Father's Day. Well, as it turns out, those 2 passengers appear to have bought their tickets on the expedition later than the others. Their spots were for a time reserved for another family.
Every time I see that picture of that father and son, but for the grace of God, it could have been a picture of us.
Jay Bloom and his son Sean say they backed out of the expedition on the Titan last minute.
Well, it's a multi-year project.
Bloom had been talking to OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush for a year about the trip. Sean Bloom had always been fascinated by the Titanic and says he was excited at first.
When he started talking to Stockton and he told me and my friend about it, obviously I was super interested in the beginning, but then I started doing a little bit of research.
Bloom says he wasn't convinced the Titan was safe. It wasn't a state-of-the-art research vessel, but a craft put together with off-the-shelf parts that would be taken to one of the most hostile environments on the planet.
You know, I asked him if he could ask Stockton to address some of my safety concerns, and Stockton called me and my friend the misinformed.
The Blooms are sharing some of their texts with Rush. In this one, Jay Bloom explained his son was concerned about the danger. Rush offered to talk to his son by video call. In another, Rush offered to discount the trip, $150,000 per person instead of $250,000, claiming it would be a last-minute special. The Blooms backed out, telling Rush they had a scheduling issue. The spots ended up being taken by Pakistani billionaire Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman.
Like the similarities between us and them, and it's kind of jarring thinking about how that literally we're one move away from that being us.
This is really focused on one thing, and that's the pressure vessel.
Now, Jay Bloom says he met with Rush in person March 1st at a Titanic exhibition in Las Vegas. He says Rush argued the dive would be safer than flying in a helicopter or scuba diving. He says Rush pitched him hard, but appeared to have complete confidence in the Titan. Jeff?
Wow, close call. Mike Armstrong in St. John's. Thanks, Mike. Smoggy skies. Coming up, the Canadian city ranked worst in the world for air quality. Montreal isn't breathing easy tonight, and it's easy to see why. The city has the world's worst air quality, according to IQ Air. That's a Swiss tech company. All that smoke from dozens of raging wildfires in Quebec has prompted smog warnings for many parts of the province, including Montreal, Quebec City, and Laval. The summer is just underway, but this is already Quebec's worst wildfire season on record. Candidates are now in the final hours of campaigning to become the next mayor of Toronto. There will be a record 102 names on the ballot tomorrow, but just one candidate has held a commanding lead in the polls for weeks now. Former NDP MP Olivia Chow is widely considered the frontrunner, though the race appears to be tightening in the final stretch. Our Farah Nasser spoke with Chow about the top issues facing Canada's largest city.
After spending nearly a decade out of politics, Olivia Chow now has hours to go in a race that will change Canada's biggest city.
Let's start off by talking about something that affects communities all over Canada. Toronto is the epicenter of housing affordability issues.
Yes,
right?
it is.
What are you going to do in this city that can be an example to the rest of the country?
More than half of the people in Toronto are renters.
Right.
And they are feeling really insecure right now because the rent is so high. I'm trying to do is, as the mayor, will buy the building.
So buy a building?
Well, if the tenants want to actually co-own it and manage it, so it's a cooperative or a land trust.
Big promises, but critics have taken aim at who will pay.
Some people say that you're idealistic. I mean, how are you going to get the money for this? How is this proven? Is it being done elsewhere?
Oh yes, it's been done before. So money, where do we find the money? Yeah. So the federal government has a national housing plan. There's like $80 billion in it across the country, and they have 3 programs that actually fits perfectly.
As the frontrunner, Chow is being attacked from all sides, including from Toronto's former deputy mayor, Anna Bailau, who is responsible for the city's housing file and has been endorsed by several former mayors, including John Tory.
The plan is to fix services and to build housing and to make life easier and more affordable, not like Olivia Chow, who only talks about increasing taxes.
Olivia Chow, well, she's the worst of them all.
Toronto's former police chief, Mark Saunders, has been endorsed by Premier Doug Ford.
She's fine with a housing crisis. In fact, she thinks you should pay more if you own a home.
I want to play you this clip, okay? Tell me what you think of this.
I'll tell you, if you want my opinion, if Olivia Chow gets in, it'll be unmitigated disaster.
Jeff Ford is the premier. It's entitled to his opinion.
So you think you can work with him? You think?
Yeah, I can. I've worked with John Baer, Jason Kenney.
The candidate pool is crowded with several high-profile candidates on the center and right.
She will probably be the mayor with the lowest level of popular support that we've had since amalgamation. But there is no organization on the other side of this campaign. There's no consensus as to who the alternative candidate should be.
You ran in 2014. You lost to John Tory. What do you think's different about Olivia Chow of 2023?
I'm more confident.
Tell me more.
I'm not worried about my English anymore because I used to be, I've been elected for 30 years.
Chow's confidence boosted by advanced polls. But on voting day, as she's learned before, anything can happen. Farah Nasser, Global News, Toronto.
Delayed delivery. What happened to Canada's special order of armoured vehicles? A Global News exclusive next. Welcome back. Global News has learned new details about the delayed delivery of millions of dollars worth of armoured vehicles. They're used to shield diplomatic staff who represent Canada in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Ottawa blames the holdup on the pandemic, but government documents tell a different story involving an alleged breach of United Nations sanctions. Touria Izri has this Global News exclusive.
Armored vehicles help protect Canadian embassy staff from bullets, bombs, and kidnappings. One of these vehicles may have saved the life of Canada's former ambassador to Haiti.
It was a political confrontation, and they threw rocks on the car, stone on the car. Not being in an armored vehicle, I could have been severely injured.
In 2018, Global Affairs Canada awarded a contract to US-based Jankel Tactical Systems, shelling out almost $20 million for a new fleet of 76 armored vehicles. But government documents obtained by Global News show the delivery was late and did not go as planned. A delay that may have put Canadian embassy staff at risk.
Armored vehicles in many countries are essential to preserve the life of people because you never know what's going to happen.
Global News has learned dozens of them were stuck in a storage facility in Jordan because a subcontractor refused to release them.
Well, I was shocked.
Procurement experts say Canada had little leverage to get the vehicles since it already paid 90% up front.
You want to save the money for when, in fact, you get the final product and provide incentives for them to deliver on time.
Canada signed the deal with Jankel, who then subcontracted storage to a Jordanian company called Jordan Light Vehicle Manufacturing, or JLVM. According to government memos, their relationship went south. On April 27, 2022, Jankel informed the government that they would be severing ties with their subcontractor due to JLVM's possible breach of UN sanctions. UN observers claim they documented vehicles manufactured by JLVM's parent company in use by the Libyan National Army, allegedly in violation of a United Nations arms embargo. JLVM's parent company would not answer when Global News asked whether it breached UN sanctions, and it would not comment on the alleged seizure. But in a statement said there's no current partnership between JLVM and Jankel. That's in contrast to Jankel, which told us it has a good working relationship with JLVM, but declined our interview request for what it calls confidentiality reasons. A government spokesperson blamed the delay on the pandemic, but refused to comment on the possible breakdown in the relationship between Jankel and its subcontractor, or the alleged violation of UN sanctions. After our repeated questions, Global News has learned the armored vehicles were finally released to Global Affairs, roughly a year after they were seized.
If you're messing around and misapplying a contract of $20 million, what about all the others? So I think it's not just this one, it's the implication that there are others that are also being bungled the same way.
And if multi-million-dollar contracts are bungled, procurement experts warn Canadian embassy staff and Canadian taxpayers are the ones on the losing end. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
Still ahead, beaming with pride. Why this year's parade included heightened security.
From a very young age, I knew I was very different. The body I was born in does not match who I identify as.
A moment of pride for this Nova Scotia Community College valedictorian. 18-year-old Quinn Legg came out as trans to his entire class during his speech at their graduation ceremony. Legg transitioned at 14, but mostly kept it a secret. The aspiring mechanic says he doesn't see enough trans representation in blue-collar trade, so he's now hoping to change that.
I'm so proud to be graduating alongside some of the brightest people that I have ever met. And I look forward to seeing the amazing things that you guys will do. Thank you.
And there was lots of love in Toronto today as thousands took part in the city's annual Pride Parade. But the celebration comes in the face of a troubling trend of open hostility against the LGBTQ2+ community. Lexi Benedict reports.
The energy is just
so welcoming and warm. It's just nothing like I ever expected, to be honest, and I love it.
A celebration of love, inclusivity, and the most welcoming environment. Here, there, everywhere is this year's theme, with a focus on proclaiming and celebrating the LGBTQ2+ community.
This parade is going to be going down in history in Toronto as one of the largest prides that Toronto has ever seen.
You can see the excitement and energy amongst the crowd for today's Pride Parade. Festive colors, beautiful costumes, cheers, and chants to close off a month of awareness and celebration. Everyone just says they're happy to be here.
We are feeling the freedom. We're just having the time to be ourselves.
An expected 2.4 million people filling the streets, including 40,000 people in the parade, sending a strong message of respect and inclusivity.
Because for so long you get picked on, you get judged, you get bullied, and it's just nice that everyone, regardless of who they are here together.
This year, safety is top of mind, with an increased security presence amid the surge of threats targeting Pride festivals and initiatives across the country.
We've asked all of our community members to look out for each other, and we're going to continue to do this.
But they say it's made their community stronger than ever.
It's really important to be out here and see that we are visible in this huge community and to show other people that they can be visible too.
And after wrapping up today's events, preparations for next year's Pride festivities will begin. Lexi Benedict, Global News.
And celebrating Pride isn't just for humans. Residents of the Toronto Zoo are also getting in on the fun. The animals donning Pride-themed outfits with rainbow-colored toys and treats. That is Global National for this Sunday night. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here again tomorrow. Have a great night.